have changed in many ways, and 17 ain't young. Let's forget the bygone days, 'cause 17 ain't young. 17 ain't young no more, not like it was once before. It's old enough to know how you feel, old enough to know when love is real. And I know what I feel inside, girl. I know that it's right I feel for you. It may be that love is blind, but 17 ain't young. You and me will change their mind, 'cause 17 ain't young. Nowadays you kinda grow up fast. We're old enough to be in love at last. I'm only happy when I'm with you. I couldn't wait another year or two. So don't you worry and don't you cry, girl. Everything's gonna work out fine, you see. Yes, it will. Wait and see. 17 ain't young. Take my hand and trust in me, 'cause 17 ain't young. Oh no, 17 ain't young.
Working on quite a few projects this year, and I'm about to have the Bobby Darin musical open, Dream Lover, which is going to be a very big deal. And
That's great. Is it going to be at Crown?
no, it's going to be at the Lyric Theatre in Sydney,
Okay, yeah.
starring David Campbell and Caroline
Yeah, that'd be
O'Connor.
perfect.
So it's a $7 million production. So so anyway,
Campbell's a bit of a crooner these days. He's a bit of a crooner. Campbell.
Oh,
He's a
no,
bit of a crooner.
yes, yeah. Oh, he desperately wanted to play this role.
You were a bit of a singer as well at some stage.
I have been.
You had a top 40 hit in the 1980s.
I did.
Yeah. Was that song written for you, or
I wrote it.
you just covered it?
No, I wrote it. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I wrote songs with the Ferrets. Richie Evans recorded some of my songs. Stephen Cummings, Renee Gayer, Little River Band recorded a couple of my songs.
I love Little River Band. Such a great. And you and I believe Peter Boyle, your
My business partner, yes, Peter Boyle.
You and Peter Boyle wrote some songs for John Paul Young.
No, he executive produced the album. I wrote songs with John Capek for that album. And I also executive produced that album, and we brought John Paul Young back from the dead and gave him a top 10 hit with Soldier of Fortune.
Yes, I rather like that song.
That's when we had a record company, in the days when we had a record company.
That's where you met Peter Boyle as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, just before then. He was actually managing me. Yeah. And so that was actually the dynamic of the relationship always.
How did you get into managing a record label?
Well, Peter was out one night at some club and ran into a guy called Mark Sikowski.
Yeah, right.
Who was a dear friend of Klaus Schultz, who played in Tangerine Dream.
Yeah.
And Klaus Schultz was looking for a couple of guys to run his record label in Australia. Yeah. So one thing led to another, and we managed the record company.
That's incredible, because, man, you've been active since you were 7 years of age.
I have, and I'm very weary.
I mean, how long has your family been in the entertainment industry for?
Apart from John Michael and myself, we're the only people
because you started on the stage in a lot of musicals. You were, by the age of 21, I read, you had started in like some of the biggest productions in this country, Oliver, and... I played Noddy when I was 12 years of age at Her Majesty's Theatre. Yeah.
And Nina Blyden had to approve that production because it was the only live production of Noddy ever done in the world.
Unreal.
So that was interesting.
So what kind of led you into film? Because I understood that you had met Peter Boyle in your music days.
Yeah.
How did you and him decide to delve into the film industry?
Well, I'd been doing, I'd been writing, I'd been a performer, and then by the time I was 21, I think you've done something too much in your youth. Yeah. You kind of associate that with when you're young and you want to do something different.
But you were always a film buff.
Yeah, I was always a film buff. My mother quoted movie stars like most people quote the Bible or Shakespeare.
Yeah.
So I was brought up on Hollywood stories and Cary Grant and all of these people.
Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn. And
but the time you got to Errol Flynn, the movie about his young life, which reminded me a lot of the young Winston film, about his adventures before he became the great man he was.
I thought it was a little hopeless trying to impersonate Errol Flynn at a later age. Because he was so distinctive.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be an interesting story to see how this man who did invent himself, how he pieced together all of the different characteristics. And you notice everyone he meets in the film, he takes something from.
Absolutely.
Like the boss with the white suit.
Like the guy, exactly. He slept with an older man for money. And he was so... He admired the man's disposition so much and style that he copied bits and pieces.
Something from everybody.
He was like Catch Me If You Can, the guy who got away with being everyone.
Yes, and he invented Errol Flynn. So I thought it would be interesting to see how he pieced together that character.
What I always found interesting about him and the way it was depicted in the film as well was his father was already rather well-known and wealthy and all that, but he wanted to go on his own...
Yes, in fact...
Do his own thing. Kind of like your story as well.
Maybe, well, the thing that Flynn wanted to do more than anything was he wanted to be a writer. Yeah. And he believed he could be a serious writer. But by the time he got back to doing that, he had a big heroin problem. Not many people know about. He was a drunk, and he was totally undisciplined in his mind.
Weren't some of the things that he smuggled through New Guinea and all that opium? Wasn't that some of the things that
Errol
he did?
did everything.
Yeah, he did everything.
He did everything.
In like Flynn.
He did everything. In fact, my favourite quote is David Niven, who was a friend of Errol's, and he said, "You can always rely on Errol to let you down."
Wow.
And that when you read some of the things Errol did, that was my dilemma with the movie. Yeah. When you actually condense it to events. Some of the things he did to people were ruthless and terrible and shocking, and yet, in the back of my mind, was all of these people though remain lifelong friends, which means he must have had incredible charm. And
Errol.
And I think that the trick to it is. You know how like a child might do something and you go, that's very, if an adult did the same thing, you'd never talk to them again, but you go, that's a kid. And I think Errol had that about him. You accepted things from Errol, you would not accept from anyone else.
Absolutely, and one would never have seen or anticipated watching Charles Chauvel's film, Mutiny on the Bounty, that this man was going to become the biggest action star in Hollywood history.
Yes. And, I think his first engagement at Warner Brothers was he played a dead body in a movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay, that was the first, an extra. Incredible. But it was from the Charles Chauvel film that got him there.
Yes, that got him there. And the thing is, his big break came with when Robert Donner, the brilliant English actor who won the Oscar for Goodbye, Mr. Chips.
Oh, so it wasn't Michael Curtiz who gave him his first big break?
No, well, he did, but Robert Donner, the man suffered from terrible asthma most of his life, and that killed him, actually. And anyway, he was supposed to play Captain Blood, and when he pulled out due to illness, they said, "Who else have we got?" And either Michael Curtiz or Jack Warner said, "What about that handsome guy?"
That's kind of what you guys did with the film Flynn. It's when that actor who was going to be in the Mutiny and the Bounty, he was cheated out of his role, and Flynn came in. Was that actually true?
that with anything to do with Errol Flynn's life, there are about 3 or 4 different stories. We chose, or I chose,
Shrouded
the
in
one
mystery.
that was the most interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
That's you so incredible. Look, I've always been a fan of Errol's. Were you a fan of a lot of his films before you pursued that project?
Yes. I was brought up on Errol Flynn movies, Robin Hood, Captain Blood.
That's incredible.
The Charge of the Light Brigade.
Would you say that was the biggest film in your directional filmography?
It's a film I didn't want to direct. I did not want to
Because
direct
Brian
it.
Kavanagh, who was quite a popular editor.
Yes, he is a good editor.
Yeah. But the film just fell apart. And I found it so incredible. It was like Australia's Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Everything the budget just kept growing and growing.
It did.
And production just kept delaying and delaying. Apparently he was producing it for like 30 months before it was handed to you, and you were given another $1 million to reshoot about 40% of the film. That is insane.
Well, there's 2 stories. My memoirs are coming out. I've been hoping that a few people would die before they came out. Because I really don't want to change any names to protect the guilty.
Yeah, right.
I think the guilty should hang themselves with their actions and their words.
That's incredible.
And they have. But they... but the thing is, when we actually saw Brian's cut of the movie, it was
a disaster.
It was a big disappointment.
It was screened at Cannes.
Not that version.
Oh, right.
Not that version.
Because I read that the version that was shown at Cannes prompted the investors to say, nah, you guys have to go reshoot.
No, the version that exists has never been seen other than by me and about 3 people in the company.
Oh my God, man.
One day, if I ever want to ruin Guy Pearce's career, I will lease it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I actually took over was because I was such a friend of Guy Pearce at that point.
Yeah. Well, you started his bloody career.
I did. Not that he remembers.
Heaven Tonight.
Yes.
Friday on My Mind. Hunting. That's insane.
And Flynn.
Yeah.
And we were working on a couple of films too when the end came. But the thing is, I looked at it, and apart from the fact that the film wasn't very good, I knew that this momentum I built up about him being such a versatile actor, that would have been killed.
I'm just curious, did you ever consider Kevin Kline to play Errol Flynn?
No.
Because he's the spitting image of him.
Graham.
Marcus Graham looked a lot like him as well?
Marcus Graham's going to play him.
Okay.
In fact, Marcus Graham has a natural charm that would have been terrific as Errol Flynn.
Boulevard Films was such a unique company because when it was formed by you and Peter, it was the first company really in Australia to have already been secured a number of films.
Yeah.
And it was this big business deal that no one else has ever come close to.
Yeah, and people resented that. Everyone in the business resented that. I remember that Peter and I, after that was announced, we went to a AFC function, whatever you call it, freeloaded function, and we walked in and, being brought up to be polite, I walked and said hello to the gathering, and virtually every producer turned their backs on us.
That's crazy, man.
Because they were so resentful.
Yeah.
And it was that resentfulness that spilled over into critics who were friends of a lot of these people in the room, and a lot of people really had it in for the company.
See, that's crazy because
the good old Australian way, you
Yeah.
can measure your level of success by the
by how
level
much
of
people are talking about you.
No,
Yeah.
the level of resentment that comes
Yeah.
back.
Oh, absolutely.
Remember that quote.
The amount of energy that they invested in doing that
Yes.
is a great reflection.
Yes, and they in many ways. When I came back from America, 9 years living in America, and Richard Wollstonecraft, who was one of the few people who's ever actually repaid the loyalty that I gave him, one of the few that's remembered. He took me out one night, and we went into this bar, and this young filmmaker came up to me and said, Boulevard Films. He said, the government conspired to bring you down. And I just laughed that off as some conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But the more I thought about it, there is an element of truth that I don't think that people didn't plot to purposely bring us down. What they did, they didn't help us.
Yeah.
They didn't help.
They didn't help.
Distributors.
But you know what you
like
did?
That,
you know what
help.
you did with Boulevard Films is you brought interest back into the Australian film market.
Yes, I did.
By a lot of investors.
Yes.
So you really set a lot of the motion.
And people don't realise that Boulevard Film, we had the first film, Australian film, ever sold to Miramax.
Yes, that was Heaven Tonight.
No, What the Moon Saw.
What the Moon Saw. Heaven Tonight was the first one sold to an American broadcasting.
Yeah, American Broadcasting Corporation,
right.
ABC.
Yeah.
Hunting was sold to Paramount. What the Moon Saw went on to be in a competition in Berlin.
And you attracted a number of international stars like Steve Burkoff and John Savage.
Oh no, I used to get calls from international distributors and even studios. I mean, Boulevard, people here don't realise the Boulevard Films was actually a big deal internationally.
Right.
Big deal internationally. At the Cannes Film Festival, where we previewed Heaven and Night, Hunting and What the Moon Saw, we made the front page of the Hollywood Reporter 3 times.
And you know, Boulevard of Broken Dreams is an incredible film, but I couldn't believe, you know, while looking at some of the things, some of the reviews for the film, some of the publicity, I couldn't believe people like David Stratton had it in for it.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, I mean, I can see how a lot of people may have perceived Boulevard Films.
But this was at a time when there were some pretty lousy Australian films.
Yeah,
I mean, let's have an honesty attack.
Yeah.
There were some pretty lousy Australian
Very
films.
Very dry. A lot of them were about the outback.
But they got good reviews.
Yeah.
Because the local critics didn't want to be seen to be kicking an Australian film, and yet with us, they had no problem taking the boots off.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, a very sad thing, when Boulevard opened, we had the second biggest gross of the week behind Die Hard.
Behind Die Hard, that's
And then
insane.
the reviews came out, and the box office went to nothing.
And it got so many nominations.
Australian critics killed that film and made rest on their conscience. Of course, they don't have one. But the Australian critics killed that one. And they're too busy having the free crepes and the champagne at the latest event. But if
it was a European movie.
Not that they can be bought, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And the funny thing is, overseas, that film was raved about. Amanda Sante phoned me from America and he said, one day will you do me a favour? Will you write me a part as good as Tom Garfield in Boulevard of Broken Dreams?
Yeah.
That is how hotly considered the film was. And when I moved to America years later, I rewrote Boulevard of Broken Dreams as an American film. And Arthur Hitler, the famous director of the Hospital and The Out-of-Towners and Love Story, the greatest tearjerker of all time.
Yeah.
He optioned it.
Yeah.
And he said, I get so much shit on my desk in regards to scripts. He said, finally, a great script comes along. And that is from the man himself. But the Australian critics thought different.
Yeah, look, you know, that's just the Australian critics. And I would expect someone like David Stratton, with so much credibility behind him and so much, you know, respect from the community, to have looked deeper into a film like Boulevard Broken Dreams, which I thought was an excellent film. It reminded me a lot of European movies.
Yes, well, it did very well in Europe. It did very well all over the world. In fact, that film, the reason we were able to do 4 films next year was because we sold that film to every territory in the world at a time when you couldn't give Australian films away.
Yeah.
I've read about you a lot. I remember one of your quotes very well. You said, success teaches you how to be an asshole, and failure teaches you to be human.
I'll stand by that.
But you haven't been a failure, Tom.
No, not on paper, anyway.
I don't want you to see Jessie while you're here.
Helen, that's not fair.
It's too soon. She just got over losing you. Let the hurt heal. For both of us.
I'm staying at the Regent.
So, you know, but
It had a bit of a Citizen Kane undertone to it.
yeah.
And it was just, it was a fantastic film. I really loved John Waters' performance, and he was actually, he won
He did.
at the AFIs for best
And
performance.
Margaret Pomeranz said that I've never heard anything so despicable in my life. She said, if he wins the award, I'm going to spit on TV, and she did.
And you know, she said something very similar
I'm
about
glad
her.
she didn't run into Johnny in a dark alley after that. He was not impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He reminded me a lot of Peter Finch in that movie.
Yes, he does look
Yeah,
like Peter Finch.
a lot like Peter Finch, which is another great Australian actor. But you know, Margaret Pomeranz said something very similar about Kerry Armstrong's performance in Hunting. She gave it like half a star, and I thought that was such a great film. It had so much style.
Well, let me tell you, Margaret Pomeranz is an idiot. She came out and she said that how stupid of a woman, I'm sick of characters like this where the woman is so stupid and gullible she falls for the wrong man. As if this doesn't happen.
Oh, it happens all the
This
time.
doesn't happen in
It
real
happens
life.
all the time.
And so suddenly Kerry was to represent all womanhood as far as Margaret Pomeranz was concerned. Well, did she happen to look at Michael Bergman and the loser husband and every other character in the film?
Yeah.
I know what Michelle wants, and I'm giving it to her. You asshole, look! You're gonna regret this. I'm a busy man. Goodbye. Goodbye.
You'll fall, Bergman. And when you do, I'll be there. Hear me? And I'll be smiling.
I wouldn't bet on it.
If she did, she would see that my view of men was far worse and far more cynical than the view of the woman.
Yeah, but Wall Street did that as well.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
People are attracted to power.
No,
Money.
For once, an Australian actress got a really meaty role written for her, and Margaret didn't get it.
Yeah.
So I should have just produced her to being a faithful, lovely, loyal housewife.
Yeah.
And home doing the dishes. Maybe Margaret would have accepted that. I don't know. You'd have to ask her psychiatrist.
Yeah, it was a very unfair review of your film, and I could not relate to her.
People were looking for things. They were looking for things. Ivan Hutchinson was a good example.
Yeah.
Ivan Hutchinson.
Strawberry fields
I know you've got
forever.
banana, but we haven't got bananas, so the strawberry.
Oh,
Very
It's
good.
just as good.
thank you.
Thanks, love. It looks terrific.
Thanks, sir.
Now, Ivan Hutchinson, who I've known ever since I was a little boy, but for some reason, whoever the gang was he was hanging out with, he gave us negative reviews of all of the films, and I know Ivan bent over backwards to say something nice about most Australian films, not with us. And then What the Moon Saw came out, and What the Moon Saw...
That was actually based on one of your children's musicals that you wrote. Sinbad,
The Last Adventure. So anyway, What the Moon Saw comes out, and that's been picked up by Miramax. It's opening, it's in competition in Berlin. It's opening the London Film Festival. By then, it's been sold to the Disney Channel and becomes a favourite on the Disney Channel. It was kind of hard to knock What the Moon Saw. So what does Ivan do? When it comes out, he chooses not to review it at all. Because if you can't say something bad, don't review it at all. That's what convinced me I wasn't paranoid and that there was...
So tell me, how is Boulevard Films formed? What did you do to get the first film going? Getting the funding for it, getting it made, really?
Oh, well, you know, we went to Sydney to meet with Malcolm Olstone.
Because you wanted to make a movie about a boxer.
Yeah, Les Darcy.
Yeah.
And the Age actually have referred to the Les Darcy script of mine as the greatest unproduced screenplay in Australia. And, you know, I've spent 25 years on that script.
What was his era, the boxer?
Yeah, First World War.
First World War, right.
And he got caught up in the conscription campaign.
Was he a world #1 champion? Or?
He was the unofficial world champion.
Wow.
To go to America to make it official, but because the government wanted him to enlist and entice young boys who idolised him to join the army, and he told them to go to hell.
Oh, wow.
They conspired, sounds like us, they conspired to ruin his career. And so it's fascinating film. It's not a boxing movie. Boxing is only the pathway into the story.
Yeah.
It's a political drama, an intrigue about how the public can build you up and how the powers that be can knock you down. And so anyway, that has come close to being made 3 times. Richard Franklin was going to direct it at one point.
Great director as well.
And then when I was living in Hollywood, Heath Ledger had it on hold for 3 years.
Wow.
And he believed it was the greatest script he'd ever read. In fact, just before he died, he gave an interview in, I think, the Telegraph, where he said the role he regretted not doing was Les Dawson. So anyway, I went to Sydney with Peter, and we had a meeting with Malcolm Oliverstone, and I did the pitch on the Les Darcy movie, and by then I'd gotten the pitch down really good. So within 15 minutes, I had tears in the room and all of this passion about Les Darcy. And then Malcolm looked at me and said, well, it's a great story. He said, but it's too expensive. He said, it's a period piece. Half of it's got to be shot in America.
Yeah.
He said, do you have anything for $1 million?
And a lot of your films are set in the entertainment industry.
Yes. Well, Scott Fitzgerald once said...
Did it come from your own kind of experiences, a lot of the stories?
Well, yes. Yeah, a lot of me is in those films, and...
Because I know that in your most recent film, Remembering Nigel, it's kind of like a mockumentary about you and your life and your...
Well, the only reason for that is when I came back from LA, Richard Wollstonecraft very kindly asked if there could be a retrospective of about 8 of my films at the Melbourne Underground Film Festival.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that would be terrific. And he said, and it would be really lovely if on the last night that we had something new from you so that people didn't think you were dead. So I had to come up with an idea to do a short film that didn't cost much money, and I could do it quickly. So I came up with this idea about everybody gathering to reminisce about a man that once knew who's now dead.
Yeah.
And everyone's opinion of this man is so different, you realise nobody knew him at all.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I got out of it. Nobody knew at all.
And the more people talk about him, the more they reveal about themselves.
Exactly.
Which is true in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Every night I hope and pray a dream lover will come my way. A girl to hold in my arms and know the magic of her charms. 'Cause I want a girl to call my own. I want a dream lover so I don't have to dream alone. Dream lover, where are you, with a love oh so true, and the hand that I can hold, feel you near as I grow old. 'Cause I want a girl to call my own. I want a dream lover so I don't have to dream alone. Someday